My brother James has a girlfriend, Lindsay, who he's been dating for 7 months. He decided to bring her to Christmas at my house, stay over Christmas Eve and leave the next day after lunch. I'd met Lindsay at drinks before this and she seemed nice. When they arrived, Lindsay walked in, complimented my decorations, large tree in the foyer, and asked how much they cost. I was a bit surprised by the question, but I said more than I'd like and moved on. Throughout the evening, she asked several questions centered around money. She asked my husband how much he paid for our house, my stepdad how much money he made in his previous job, and how much my watch cost. She even Googled one of our art pieces to see how much it sold for and started talking about how crazy it was we spent that much, which frankly was very uncomfortable. My stepdad pulled my brother aside and asked if there was a problem, but my brother just said it was normal for her to do that, but he did say he'd speak to her about it. On Christmas morning, we all gathered around to open presents, and thankfully Lindsay didn't say anything untoward, so I figured James had spoken to her about her intrusive questions. However, at lunch, we were talking about plans for January, and Lindsay loudly said that she didn't know how we could afford to do anything in January, as she added up the total we'd spent on gifts, and then proudly proclaimed the total amount. The whole table went silent, and honestly, I was equally shocked and annoyed that someone could be so ignorant. I looked at Lindsay and said, "You are the world's most diligent gold digger. Seriously, would you like to be the family accountant since you're already tracking expenses?" Lindsay stuttered out an apology and tried to explain, but my stepdad just changed the conversation and we moved on. She was mercifully quiet for the rest of dinner. After they left, my brother messaged me saying I'd really upset Lindsay and was out of line with what I said. I argued that he'd said he'd talked to her and he clearly didn't. Not that someone should have needed guidance to know how crass her comments were. He's saying I owe both of them an apology, but I think Lindsay's behaviour was disgraceful. My parents say Lindsay was wrong, but I probably should have said something in private, or they could have, and I shouldn't have said something in front of everyone. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She came into your house and started appraising your assets' net worth like you're about to go to auction. Are you sure she's not planning a New Year's Eve heist? Seriously though, your brother had the gall to ring you up and say you upset her when she's asking intrusive financial questions and itemizing your belongings. If I were you, she wouldn't be getting an invite back. She is a girlfriend of 7 months. This is her first Christmas with the family. First, I may get away with this level of crassness with my mother-in-law of 6 years, if it's clear I'm joking, but come on, lady. In what world is asking people about how much money they make and adding up the totals of Christmas gifts normal? So sorry to your brother, who is suffering from extreme delusion. Agreed. She was being incredibly rude and obviously making everyone uncomfortable. For me, when she Googled the price of the art piece, would have been a what the heck moment. Like I'd start locking up my jewellery and watching her. As for my brother, I have one word. Prenup. You are the idiot. She's not a gold digger, such a stupid term by the way. She's simply in awe of excess spending. Yes, it was rude and ignorant for her to make comments, but that doesn't make her an idiot. You owe her an apology for the inappropriate name-calling. If you were raised the way you imply, you know how to soft-cut a conversation. You took a hard cut at her in public, which is as unseemly as asking how much the tree was. Your goal was to make her uncomfortable. Is she autistic? Autistic people have trouble understanding the unwritten rules of society, such as off-limits conversation topics. Even if she is on the spectrum, that is no excuse to be excessively rude and make a family's Christmas awkward and uncomfortable. People think that mental issues are a blanket excuse for any type of crappy behaviour, and that's just not how the real world works. Don't apologise to your brother. Why should you? She should be apologising to you and your brother should be apologising on her behalf. If someone is rude to you, you're allowed to defend yourself and shut them down, which is what you did. Maybe next time she'll learn to keep her mouth shut and not constantly talk about money. I, 51 male, have 2 children. My daughter is my biological child. She's 24. My son is her older half-brother and he's 29. Their mother and I hate to call her that, but she was a hook-up baby. We slept together twice and my daughter was the result. I never knew about her until she was fine and her brother was 10, and they were removed from their mother's care. She didn't take care of them and their school became concerned because my son was raising my daughter essentially. She told them I was my daughter's father and that I wasn't to know about her, but they wanted to try and place the kids with family first. My son had no family. His biological father and his biological father's family are all criminals and in and out of jail, or in the father's case, serving a very lengthy sentence. So I told the social worker I would adopt him and raise them together. It took some time. Even though it would keep the kids together, I was not a foster parent before this, so they were extremely reluctant to place my son with me. Ultimately, both kids suffered not being together, and I was thankfully able to keep my kids together. My son calls me my name or dad. It's interchangeable, really. He only met me when he was 10 and I was a stranger, so it took time for us to become true father and son even after I adopted him. I never felt like him calling me dad was a must. I know he loves me. I know I am his dad to him and to me, but our family is not typical. Trauma and time play a part in our relationship. We adore each other and he tells me everything, so I consider that a win. But my son's future in-laws are bothered by the fact that he often uses my name. It apparently became a problem when they heard him rehearse a speech with his fiancée, where he was using my name and dad for me. So they complained to their daughter, who told them to leave it. Then they decided to give him a hard time, and later they decided I should nip this in the bud. So I needed to speak to my son and make him show the proper respect and decorum by dropping my name entirely from the speech and his vocabulary during the wedding. I asked them why. They said it looked disrespectful and shameful. I told them it was neither of those things. Then they asked how I could raise the boy and not find it incredibly insulting that he calls me by my name. At one point, they questioned whether I truly loved him and saw him as my son, which made me angry enough to tell them what he called me was none of their concern and to keep their noses out of my family relationships. They are insulted that I said this to them, and they are making a bigger fuss than before. My future daughter-in-law told them they were sticking their noses into stuff that wasn't their business, but I feel like I made things worse, and they say I'm a disrespectful idiot. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It is indeed none of their business. It's so frustrating to hear of people who care more about minor appearances than all the love and goodness demonstrated in this situation. I admire you for what you did. You're fine, OP. Getting offended on someone else's behalf is weird and unproductive. What your son calls you is no one else's business. Gotta love the irony of the future ILs calling him the boy in your face while complaining about him not using proper titles. The hypocrisy is hilarious. Sorry they're being so weird for no reason. And OMG, they're so arrogant to even bring it as a topic, not to mention making demands. Nip this in the bud. It's none of their business, first of all, and if I read correctly, they're also 19 years too late for nipping anything in any buds. So that's just an unhinged thing to say all round. Man, that's weird as heck, and the future in-laws need to learn some boundaries like yesterday. My girlfriend, 22, and I, 25 male, have been together for almost 6 months. As she lives across the country from her parents and couldn't do the travel this year, she was invited to come to my family Christmas instead. She'd met my parents, but it was her first time meeting most of my extended family. A couple of days before Christmas, we woke up to find her pet hamster had died in the night. She was really upset about it. It was a year old, which I think is a pretty normal life for a hamster. She cried and didn't feel like doing anything for the whole day, which was fine. We even had a little funeral for it and buried it in our backyard. Come Christmas morning, my girlfriend is still sad and doesn't want to wake up and have breakfast together or open presents. She said she couldn't enjoy it as she'd bought presents for her hamster and it was making her too sad. I told her I could take her to the store and she could pick out a new hamster as a present to cheer her up. She got extremely upset at this suggestion and started bawling, telling me I was being heartless. It wasn't something she could just replace. I started to get angry because at this point it had been 2 full days of this and it felt a bit performative. Finally, I left her alone so I could cool off. At about 1, I went back to check on her and she was just lying in bed on her phone. I told her she needed to start getting ready as we had to leave the house by 2 for Christmas dinner. I saw she was watching hamster TikTok and I told her this was only making her more upset and she needed to get up right now or she would make us late and embarrass us. She started shouting at me and said she wasn't coming to Christmas, that I shouldn't expect her to come when her pet had just died and that I was being emotionally unavailable. I said my whole family was expecting to meet her, they'd bought gifts for her. She said they'd all understand, that she was just too upset to deal with everything. She claimed she would make a bad impression if she came because she was too miserable. I told her she was being utterly ridiculous. I know she's sad, but my family isn't going to take a hamster dying as a serious reason to miss the biggest holiday of the year. I said she needed to get ready to go and there would be no further discussion. She ended up coming, but we were late. I thought everything went fine. Afterward, my mother sent me a message saying my girlfriend didn't seem like herself and asking if everything was all right. My girlfriend saw the message and lost it at me again, saying this was exactly what she was worried about and now my whole family would hate her. I really am at a loss for what to do at this point. It's been a couple of days and the fight hasn't been resolved. I really don't think I was in the wrong, but she's extremely hurt and saying I'm being a psychopath. You are the idiot. Replace hamster with cat, dog, horse, animal in this story. Does her reaction seem more understandable now? Just because it's a hamster to you doesn't mean it was the same for her. I don't know why you were so concerned with parents meeting her, because I doubt she will be your girlfriend much longer. You might not think a dead hamster is the end of the world, but your girlfriend really loved the rodent and needed more time to come to terms with his passing. The issue wasn't really about the hamster, it was about a young lady who was not in the proper mindset to be meeting her boyfriend's family, but you made her go anyway. You can think she was overreacting, but that doesn't matter. She shouldn't have been made to leave home until she felt ready to leave home. Not to be morbid, but just in case she decides to get another hamster, are you sure the hamster wasn't hibernating? Hamsters get buried all the time from going into hibernation, which is very similar to death. Is this her first hamster? Because in that case, it can be easily mistaken for it dying. Holy crap, I didn't know this was a thing. We buried him in a shoebox with some flowers and a couple of his toys. But geez, I really hate to think of the little guy possibly being alive out there. I think I should dig him up to check. About a week ago, I, 23 female, arrived at my parents' house. My sister, Kate, 29, and her daughter, B, young child, arrived a couple of days ago right before the storm started. It's currently minus 20 Fahrenheit, so nobody is going outside until it warms up. B was a handful before the storm rolled in, and now that we're all stuck inside, it's only got worse. I don't do great in the cold. I have some issues with circulation in my limbs, and to help combat it, I have various heating options at home. Because I had to travel a few hours to get here, I only had a heated blanket that my parents provided, a small electric heating pad, and a microwavable stuffed dog. It isn't super easy to move around with the blanket or the pad, so for the past couple of days, I've been using the dog. Last night, my niece noticed that I had it on my lap while we decorated cookies and asked to play with it. I told her no, and she got a bit whiny, but we could direct her, so it was fine. Around bedtime, she asked again if she could have the dog. I told her no again and tried to explain that it's a special thing that helps me so I don't turn to ice. She started having a meltdown. Kate asked what had happened and I explained. She told me to give up the dog to make B happy and use a heating pad instead. I told her I wasn't going to do that because I didn't want to use it later and then have B think she was entitled to it because she wanted to play. Kate said I was being selfish and that was that. This morning B was acting out at breakfast and told everyone it was because I was being mean to her and not sharing my toys. I once again told her that it's something that helps me move and that's why she can't play with it. She had another meltdown and my sister is now giving me the cold shoulder. My parents are on my side, but I feel like an idiot for causing drama at an already stressful time of year. Not the idiot. Just be more direct. Show her how the dog heats up. Show her that that is to make you feel better. Tell her that it's not a toy, it's medical equipment. No one takes someone else's medicine. There are 2 lessons in one. Agreed, it is a medical device to you, not a toy. Your sister is an idiot and needs to understand the difference. I'm not a parent, but honestly, if it was just a stuffed animal that you liked and didn't want her to play with, that would have been fine. People who think children deserve to just have anything they set their eyes on and like are setting their kids up for failure. Imagine the day reality hits and they learn that they are, in fact, not entitled to every single object they desire. Your niece is spoiled and her mom is enabling her. Your sister is clearly the cause of why your niece acts out. If the solution to your child throwing a fit is just to give them what they want, then they will just continue throwing a fit. I have some little cousins like that, and their parents never say no or discipline them. As a result, they are a terror when they come over and do poorly in school. My 26 female husband, 27, and I are having twins, and I'm due in 6 months. We already have a son together who's a toddler. We're both more than excited about this moment, and we had our gender reveal last Saturday. We invited our inner circle of friends and family. We did the cliché popper that lets out confetti, and each of us had one which represented the gender of each twin. When we popped the confetti, we found out that both twins will be girls. I was very excited because I always envisioned myself being a mother of girls, and knowing that I would have even more than one made me feel amazing. However, when my husband realised the genders, he seemed visibly disappointed and bummed, and apparently our guests noticed as well. My husband really wanted at least one of them to be a boy. He even started picking out toys and names. He acted like this for a few minutes. Finally, even his friends had to comfort him in front of everyone and tell him that he should just be grateful. I honestly got second-hand embarrassed that my husband needed to be comforted in front of everyone because he would have healthy girls. After that, he tried to cheer up, but you could still tell he was still very upset. I was upset at him but brushed it off until the party was over. After it was done, I confronted him about why he did that. I told him he should just be grateful and that he already had a son. I told him how embarrassing it was that everyone we knew had to see him act like a child just because the gender of his children were girls. We started going at it and are still acting kind of sour towards each other. I obviously love him and I want to diffuse the tension, but I need to know if I'm the idiot. Not the idiot. Geez, was he born a few centuries ago? Why bother having a gender reveal if you're disappointed by the answer? Gender disappointment is supposed to last about 10 seconds, and then you act like an adult and appreciate the new lives coming into your family. Especially since he already has a son, it's not like some TikTok videos where they have 4 little girls with them and then it pops pink again. Well, I find baby gender parties weird and sort of creepy to begin with, but even more frustrating is that your husband seems to be under the impression that his children's biology will determine the relationship he will have with them and the toys they will enjoy, etc. He's shoving your kids into a box before they're even born, and that's the bit he needs to get over. However, if you knew both of you had a strong preference, having a public gender reveal was a bad idea. Instead, learn from this and have all other emotionally fraught reveals in private, so emotions can be processed. For God's sake, everyone's the idiot here.